On the night of April 14th, 1912, as the RMS Titanic sailed through the cold and silent Atlantic Ocean, few passengers were aware that deep within the ship, in a small wireless room filled with equipment and faint electrical sounds, "Please subscribe," a series of messages would soon be sent that would carry urgency, fear, and hope across thousands of miles of open water. These were not ordinary messages. They would become the final signals from Titanic messages that would echo through history long after the ship itself disappeared beneath the surface. At the beginning of that night, communication aboard the Titanic was routine. Wireless operators were busy sending passenger messages, connecting people to loved ones far away. The technology itself was still relatively new, but it had already transformed how ships communicated at sea. Messages could now travel invisibly through the air, crossing vast distances in moments. For many on board, this was a convenience. But within a few hours, it would become a lifeline. When the iceberg struck the Titanic, the situation was not immediately clear. There was confusion, uncertainty, and a delay before the full seriousness of the event was understood. But once it became evident that the ship was in danger, the role of the wireless operators changed completely. Their focus shifted from routine communication to something far more critical, sending distress signals. The first of these messages were calls for assistance, sent to nearby ships in the hope that help would arrive quickly. The operators worked with urgency, tapping out signals in Morse code, repeating the ship's position, and making it clear that the situation was serious. Among these signals was the infamous distress call, a sequence that would later become universally recognized SOS. At the time, both SOS and CQD were used, reflecting a transition in communication standards. These messages carried more than just information. They carried emotion, pressure, and the weight of responsibility. Every signal sent was an attempt to reach someone, somewhere, who could respond in time. The wireless room became a place of intense focus, where every second mattered and every message could make a difference. As the situation worsened, the frequency of messages increased. Calls were sent repeatedly, reaching ships that were both near and far. Some vessels responded quickly, changing course and moving toward Titanic's last known position. Others received the signals but were too far away to provide immediate assistance. The ocean, vast and silent, became the space through which these messages traveled, connecting the Titanic to a world that could not yet see what was happening. Inside the ship, conditions were changing rapidly. Passengers were being moved toward lifeboats, and the reality of the situation was becoming impossible to ignore. But in the wireless room, the work continued. The operators remained at their posts, sending message after message, even as the danger around them increased. Their role was clear. They were the link between the ship and any possible rescue. What makes these final messages so powerful is not just their content, but the circumstances under which they were sent. The operators knew that time was limited. They understood that the ship was in serious trouble, and yet they continued to send signals, maintaining communication for as long as possible. Their dedication ensured that the situation was known, that help was on the way, even if it could not arrive in time for everyone. As the final moments approached, the messages became more urgent, more direct. There was no longer any uncertainty. The ship was sinking, and the need for immediate assistance was clear. These last signals represent the final connection between Titanic and the outside world, a series of calls that would outlast the ship itself. Eventually, the signals stopped. The wireless room fell silent. The connection was lost, but by then, the messages had already traveled far enough. They had reached other ships, set rescue efforts in motion, and ensured that the story of what was happening would not disappear into the ocean unnoticed. Looking back, the final messages sent from the Titanic are a powerful reminder of the role of communication in moments of crisis. They show how technology, even in its early stages, could make a difference. They also highlight the importance of human effort, of individuals who stayed focused and committed even under extreme pressure. More than a century later, these messages are still remembered, not just as technical signals, but as voices from the past. They represent a moment where human determination met technological possibility, creating a connection that extended beyond the limits of the ship itself. In the end, the final messages from the RMS Titanic were more than just calls for help. They were a record of what was happening, a way of ensuring that the story would be heard. And even today, they continue to remind us that in the face of uncertainty, Communication can be one of the most powerful tools we have, and that is why those final signals, sent into the darkness of the Atlantic Ocean, continue to echo through history. After the ship itself is gone,